That's all, Shane. Thank you, Matthew. Away you go.
Great. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well today. My name is Matthew Barrett. I'm the founder of GoalClick. And just to introduce straight away with this first photo, this is the moment that Spain won the Women's Under-17 World Cup in Uruguay in 2018. And we'll come back to a bit more context around that later. So what is GoalClick? GoalClick is a global football storytelling platform. What does that actually mean? It means that we find people from all around the world and we ask them to tell their own stories about their lives and their football communities. So this is very much a first-person perspective storytelling initiative. It's the insider view of a team, of a community, rather than the outsider view that most media involves a photographer or a filmmaker or a journalist going into a team or community. This is really flipping that and giving the people themselves the opportunity to tell their own story through their own eyes. So what we're ultimately doing is, we're helping people understand each other and the world through football. And the reason why I say this is because sometimes I think football has a bit of a lazy definition of uniting the world or bringing the world together. And whilst I think that does happen on a local level, I prefer to see football as a way of helping people understand another culture, another society, and somebody else's life. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to focus on most of the women's stories that we tell, and actually about 2/3 of our stories come from the female game. That is a deliberate policy because, you don't need me to tell you this, but in most countries in the world, in every country in the world, it is harder for women and girls to get onto the football pitch and thrive on the football pitch. There are always more challenges and barriers in the way. And we feel that actually makes women and girls better storytellers with more compelling stories to tell. So this presentation will mainly focus obviously on the women's game. We do men's football as well, but the majority of what we do is female focused. So how do we tell these stories? With every storyteller who we work with, we start off by giving them a disposable analog camera, as modelled here by two members of the Australian women's national team, Steph Catley and Alana Kennedy, taken from our Women's World Cup project. We give them a camera and then we ask them to capture their world as they see it, and then write in their own words their story. So most of what you see from GoalClick is photography and written word. And the reason we use disposable cameras is 3 reasons really. One, for the equality factor, to have everyone equal wherever they're from. Number 2, because the aesthetics are great and it's a unique and quite a fun way of engaging with a tool like this. And the 3rd reason, and most importantly, is because we believe it encourages people to be quite deliberate and intentional in the stories that they tell. In a world where we take thousands of photos and maybe never really look at them again, we feel that having scarcity allows people to really think about what story they want to tell. And ultimately, it gives a sense of intimacy and a real raw look at people's lives, teams and communities. This is the only slide with any writing on it. Bit of a summary of what we do, but also it allows me to talk about the kind of people that we work with. We really do work from the grassroots to the elite. We work with many marginalized communities, particularly in the refugee world, particularly in conflict zones, women breaking barriers all around the world, from India, Pakistan and Nepal to Peru and Argentina. But then we also work up through the grassroots game into football fan culture, and then, as you've seen a little bit already, into the elite, particularly exemplified by our Women's World Cup project, where we worked with 40 women from all around the world, including 18 who were on the pitch in France in 2019. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly run through a few of the stories that we've covered, With all of them, I provide a photo and then a quote from the person in their own words, because really it's not necessarily for me to tell their story. It's about giving them that platform to tell their own. And then I will also go into a couple of the projects specifically that we've done recently, and then hopefully have some time for some questions. So the only male image that I'm going to show is our first ever story, and that came in 2014 from Sierra Leone, from the National Amputee Football Association, and this was the first story we ever told. I just think it's always good to kind of show where GoalClick came from. But our second ever story that we told came from Iraq, from Kurdistan, and this was at the time of the height of Islamic State controls, Islamic State control in the country. We worked with an organisation called Spirit of Soccer, and they were training boys and girls about 30 kilometres from the front line at that time, and clearly extremely powerful photos of women and girls playing football, but particularly within the context of what was happening at the time. Very early on, we also worked in India, in Mumbai, with a 14-year-old girl from a girls' football team in the Dharavi slum. And as I hope you can start to see, when the photos are paired alongside the quotes, they have real power. So I'm just moving that away. I mentioned our Women's World Cup project. This is probably the fan favourite. Sam Mewis from the US Women's National Team took part in the project, and her photos really took us inside the camp and the US Women's National Team at a time when, and this is probably reflective of many of the teams that were playing, there was still a bit of an unknown factor as to what the realities of life of elite level women's football players was like. And I tend to believe that this photo could probably not have been taken by anyone apart from a teammate, and probably not by anyone operating a camera apart from a disposable analog camera. And Sam gave a wonderful account of what it was like to be part of this team as they started their journey towards ultimately success. We try to bring together our stories into exhibitions. We've created 11 exhibitions around the world in 9 countries, predominantly around major tournaments. And this is obviously a snapshot of how we brought together stories from around the world, from elite level players from Australia, from Brazil, from France, from the UK, from England rather, and from the United States. And then the next part of my presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the projects that we do with partners. So whilst the global project kind of picks a person here, a person there, wherever we have a really interesting story to tell, what we try and do more of these days is we focus in on a specific topic, whether that be a city, a country, an initiative, an issue in the world, and we dive deep into that topic. So one of those, for instance, was with Uefa, where we told the story of the Uefa Women's Champions League from the perspective of those involved in it. So here, Lucy Bronze took us into the inner sanctum of the Lyon changing room again, as they were on a march towards success in 2019. We also created a series recently in Qatar, and Qatar is a very interesting country for many reasons. It obviously has a reputation around well, many parts, has a reputation around many things, whether it should or shouldn't be hosting a major tournament, and how it is treating its workers, and various other issues that we won't go into right now. But one of the things that we really wanted to uncover was what is the situation in terms of football culture in the country. And what we really uncovered was quite a thriving women's and girls football scene that definitely took us by surprise, and I feel would surprise many people. So rather than wade into debates around many issues that are raised by a tournament like this, what we feel that we can do is we can really give a voice to the people themselves within a country to explain what their football lives and their football communities are really like. We've also worked with the Homeless World Cup, which is an incredible organisation doing some amazing work around the world. And obviously one of our stories here from an Austrian participant originally from Afghanistan via Iran shows the kind of stories that we're uncovering working with NGOs and charities, which forms a real bedrock of what we do. A point I would kind of say here around why we think the work we're doing is important is because what we're trying to do is actually get out of the way. And I know there's an irony of me telling these people's stories today, but what we really feel is that there are so many marginalized and dispossessed people around the world, particularly women and girls, whose voices are unheard, overlooked, and silenced. And what we're trying to do is get out of the way and allow them to have that voice heard. And no more so than in the final project I'm going to talk about, which is our refugees project, which we are doing with the UN. So for the last couple of years, we've been developing a project where all of our storytellers are refugees, asylum seekers, or internally displaced persons. And we are finding people in refugee camps, in new host communities, whether that be in Europe, the Middle East, or any other continent, and internally displaced persons, and really giving them the chance to tell their story about their life as they are rebuilding their lives after displacement. One example of who we've worked with are young Syrian girls in Zaatari refugee camp in Jordan. Just think it's sometimes nice to just sit with the quote and not necessarily speak. We've worked with Afghan girls in Australia with an organisation called Football United. And, you know, and also Afghan girls in Europe as well. So if I were to give some broad sweeping conclusions before opening up to any questions, one thing we feel very passionate about is football is really a common language, and we feel that it's a way where people can understand someone's life and someone's community in a way that they wouldn't otherwise necessarily do. I think quite often that issues of social justice and gender equality are not people's priority, even if they do care about them. And by positioning their stories through football, we feel we can hook in people to care about these issues almost by stealth, but definitely in a way that they wouldn't otherwise necessarily care about. So we will continue to tell these stories at all levels of the game. We'll continue to focus on women and girls as a priority. And yeah, I encourage you to take a look at some of the stories in more detail on our website and on our social media, because as I say, it's not necessarily for me to tell their story. As you can see by their quotes and their photos, there's some incredibly powerful stories out there to be told. So yeah, that's my whistle-stop tour through GoalClick, and yeah, open to any questions.
Thank you, Matthew, and appreciate that. That's really great insight. And I know at the at the start of the presentation there, we were talking about success in different realms. I do really think the initiative that you guys have set up is a really successful one to help support. Again, I know you have other initiatives with the male side, but within the women's side, allowing those opportunities is really fascinating. So for those attendees who are asking questions, I'll always start with anonymous attendees as well, just to let you know. So one of the first questions comes in is really what inspired you really to start this initiative in the first place, I suppose?
It's a very good question. I mean, it was a slightly crazy idea to start with, I'm not going to lie. In 2014, myself and a friend had this brainwave that we would do this project. From my personal perspective, if we go back a long time, so when I was at university, I studied sport, politics and war. So I've always been someone who's interested in when there is political upheaval or conflict, how can we tell those stories, the story of a country, through the lens of football. I think football is and sport in general, is a really great entry point to understand a broader issue. My personal kind of passion has come from sport in armed forces and sport in conflicts throughout the 20th century. But I just also feel that it's the kind of stories that I wanted to know and I wanted to help show. So yeah, that's how it started. And to be honest, it started by sending out a camera to Sierra Leone, crossing our fingers and having low expectations. But as you saw from that very first photo that came back, we realized very, very quickly that when we saw those players coming back towards the camera on their crutches, that we had a very powerful project in the making. And the fact that the storyteller was a church minister and a coach for that team meant that it had extra power. So yeah, that's a bit of the background.
No, thank you. It's a really powerful one, and I suppose one of the other questions that we've got coming in is actually talking about the other kind of environmental factors you can have. So was there, regarding the disposable aspects of the project, are there any steps taken to address the environmental factors, such as to reduce waste, especially that plastic waste and so on?
Yes. So first of all, the project is a remotely run project. So a question we are often asked is, do you come? And we say no, because we are very deliberately not wanting to fly people around the world. And something that's very interesting in the COVID environment is that we also feel that we're better placed than ever to help organizations tell these stories, because sending production crews in is just a non-starter, and I think will be a bit of a non-starter for a long time. So user-generated content, which is what this is, but done in a more coherent narrative, I think is a very compelling thing at the moment. So we automatically reduce like 99% of our potential environmental footprint like that. In terms of the cameras, those cameras are made from recycled plastic, and then apart from the alkaline battery, they are all recycled afterwards because they are essentially broken up. I know way too much about disposable cameras now, it's a bit bizarre. They are broken up and then recycled. So we're pretty confident that relative to any other way of telling these stories, that we have environmentalism at the heart of what we're doing.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. That's what one of the next questions are, because again, this is showing just how diverse the audience is today as well, is actually, are any of the stories on the website told in non-English language as well? Is there any potential future, or where can you direct them, please? Sorry, to read those stories.
Yes, so I mean, English is the language that we default to for relatively obvious reasons. I mean, I guess it started because I speak English, but in general, it is a language that most people speak if they speak a second language in the world. However, we are definitely doing more storytelling in other languages. We just launched a Brazilian story last week, and a lot of the accompanying material was introduced in Portuguese. We've done a few stories where we have done dual language in French or in Spanish. It is something we know we need to improve and we want to improve. at the moment, it's predominantly English language. But yeah, we are planning to tell more in other languages.
Great to hear. And I suppose, like, and again, this is another question come in, like, which shows again there's interest there and just how well you've done with this initiative as well. Is how does it evolve from 26 photos and the contribution or contributors' words to what goes out via your platforms, throughout partner platforms?
So obviously, what we're doing at the moment is we start with those photos and the written word, and then we get such great photos and such powerful writing that we can kind of repurpose that for the channels that we use. We are evolving into audio and short film and spoken word, as well as obviously doing photography exhibitions, because ultimately we're interested in that first person perspective. Photography is one great execution of that, but for us, there's a lot more to go. And actually, audio and spoken word is a really exciting world for us right now, because, there's one thing seeing through someone's eyes, there's one thing reading someone's words, but I think there's an extra element in hearing them deliver verbally. So yeah, I would say watch this space in terms of how we're evolving into other formats.
No, that's brilliant. And there's been a lot of positive comments about the initiative again as well. And one person is actually, can anyone get involved in this, and how can people help support the initiatives as well?
Absolutely. I guess that is my ask for everyone today. I mean, please do get in touch. There's my email. Please do get in touch. We are always looking for more stories and organizations to work with on a purely editorial level. We work with a lot of NGOs. We work with a lot of individuals who have a story to tell. There's one person on this call, Gina Lewandowski, has been a participant very recently. So we're always keen for more storytellers. We have a particular focus around the refugee world at the moment as we do this project with the UN. But then also, the cold, hard facts of life is that we also need to be sustainable. And we do work with brands and clubs and leagues and governing bodies to create those kind of deeper, bigger storytelling series. So if there is anyone also listening from one of those organizations that loves GoalClick, I would happily receive an email and see how we can work together.
No, that's brilliant. I suppose obviously since you started the GoalClick and you've achieved so much in a short space of time, what is there kind of any direction or any ambition that you still got as an initiative that you really want to achieve towards succeeding with?
Yes, there are lots. I'm trying to think of the easiest ones to say. I think I've just talked about the different formats, and that definitely is something really important for us. We want to invest in podcasts. We want to invest in, when we can, live storytelling events. Once COVID is behind us, we are starting to look at other sports actually, and potentially by the end of the year we might have a series in a different sport. Football will always probably be the focus, given its oversized role in the world, but there are other ways to expand. I think that there are a couple of countries that are of particular interest to us right now that we've never covered yet. We've done North Korea, which I thought would be one of the hardest ones to do. We're very interested in Syria and Iran, and my personal ambition is to get something from Antarctica. But ultimately, I think the focus will also be on creating those bigger, deeper series like we're doing with refugee football at the moment with the UN. There is so many, wherever there's football, there's a way to do a deeper dive into it. So I don't know exactly what will come down the line, but there'll be lots more coming, I'm sure.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. And again, like some of the areas you've spoken to about where football's actually reaching and where the power of women in football, women in sport in general is really inspiring as well. So I noticed you've gone on to a different photo, so great.
I'm just flicking through so people can re-see them.
worries, thank you very much. I was like, oh, is that another story to tell and so on? But no, that's great. And I suppose, like, is there anything that you've achieved within the male side of your program that you want to try and replicate within the female side as well?
I mean, that is a really interesting question, and actually, no, because I do genuinely believe that our strongest stories and our strongest storytellers have come from the female game, and I hinted at that in my presentation. There is always more barriers, more challenges, and more resilience shown by women and girls to make it to where they have got to. Like, none of you on this call need me to tell you that. Like, if a female athlete has got to the same level as a man, she's probably had to work harder. So I actually think that the male game can learn a lot from the women's game, and I've seen to have that come up a lot at the moment, that people are always asking, oh, what can the women's game learn from the men's game? And there's a lot, obviously, but in terms of storytelling and in terms of having more to a personality beyond just football, I think, and purpose and cause and activism and like a place in society, I actually think the male game can take a lot from the women's game. So yeah, I think I would probably say no.
No, thank you very much, to be honest. And there was one last question just pop in before we get your concluding thoughts and stuff like that. Is has there been any case studies within Brazil? And if so, what were they, please?
Brazil specifically?
That's come through as a question from the audience, yes.
Yeah. So we actually launched a story from Brazil in Salvador, in the northeast of the country last week. So it's sitting prominently on our website and social media at the moment. We've also done a story in the with two of the Brazilian women's national team. That was part of our Women's World Cup project with Tamires and Alina Reyes. And we are also currently working with another Brazilian women's footballer who is now playing in Spain. We did do one male story, a kind of futsal based in Brazil, but yeah, Brazil has been a country that we have been very prominent in. I would say though that in the next few years, countries that I'm particularly interested in right now, China, India, Mexico, USA, Canada, with United 26 to look forward to, and what's going on in the Middle East, both from a Gulf state perspective, whether it be what's happening in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, or kind of a more grassroots level in kind of Jordan and Lebanon. They're kind of really interesting places at the moment for us.
That's brilliant. And again, thank you very much for your time, Matthew. And one of my colleagues has asked if we are brothers because we have the same surname, but I can assure you that I don't think we are. So
that would be super. That would be very much nepotism, wouldn't it? If you just get your brother on the webinar.
So I suppose, are there any concluding comments from yourself just with regards to contacting people or anyone wanting to reach out and so
on? GoalClick is built on collaboration. We've achieved nothing by doing it on our own. Every single story, every single series we do is about working long term and deeply with people, and also connecting them on within our network and giving them other opportunities. So a lot of people say they're good collaborators. We literally can't do anything without collaboration. So I'm keen to hear from anyone if this has sparked anything. And if we can find a way to collaborate, brilliant. I think that's my closing note, is that in a world where everything is very rapid, and everyone wants to create really quick, short content, that's fine. But I think what we're trying to do is show that there's still a place for slow form content and deeper, powerful storytelling with a purpose. And to get out of the way and let the people's voices shine through. I'm just sometimes sad that I can't do these kind of webinars with, people whose stories I'm telling. But that would be probably a little bit more tough in some cases. So yeah, thank you for the chance to speak to everyone today, and I hope that people have enjoyed it.